Hi, welcome to the Please Bear With Us podcast, where we talk about family, friends, faith, and anything in between.
Oh, hey, everybody, we're back. I got a joke to start us with this week. It's not really a joke, I guess. Doesn't have a question and answer, but it's a hospital joke, so you may appreciate it.
Oh, boy.
So I asked the surgeon if I could give myself the anesthesia, and the surgeon said, "Go ahead, knock yourself out."
Ba-doom.
Yeah. Wah, wah, wah.
I like it.
So we're going to go a little deep tonight, I think. We can tell our stories, testimonies, whatever you want to say, and
I like story. I like the word story. We were talking about this week in Rooted, Tyler, right?
Yes.
About sharing our stories. We'll have a story, right?
That was actually this week's topic, and we got through like one day of the paperwork of it, but
it was
was
awesome.
worth it. Yeah.
So I feel like testimony is your lead up to finding Jesus, and the story is, from when you can remember back to like now.
I think the word testimony, too, I think there's a lot of kind of stereotypes around that word, that it's really strictly about, I found Jesus, I got saved, and then I got baptized. Done. Versus, we talked about this past week. We all have a story, and our story is it's all in God's plan, according to God's will and God's timing. And I think sometimes we feel like, and tonight I think we'll hear that some of us don't maybe appreciate our story as much as others because we don't feel our story is as compelling. But hardship looks different for everybody, right?
I think my story is somewhat interesting, but my testimony is not, because, I guess we'll get into it later, but like, I wasn't crazy, I wasn't a drug addict, I wasn't an alcohol, I guess, was maybe an alcoholic, but I wasn't a drunk, I didn't have suicidal thoughts, I didn't have crazy depression or anything like that when I came to Jesus, and saved me from. So in that way, my testimony is quite lame, but I think my story from growing up and stuff is interesting.
Well, I'd say start there. Let's start with you, since you
Start
kind of
with
open the door for it.
Okay.
Let's hear the diary according to Scott, I guess. I don't know. Diary's
Diary?
not the
Dear
journal.
diary.
Tyler, do you have a diary?
No, I don't.
Does it have a little heart lock on it?
Oh, you're talking about that diary?
Yeah.
Yes, I guess I do then.
I don't know why anybody would keep a diary. And then people, cry about reading the diary. It's like,
Yeah.
don't write anything in there if you don't want anybody to read
Well, I
it.
got a question,
I
though.
know.
Isn't like a gender specific, like girls have diaries, guys have journals?
Yes,
Oh, yeah,
I
that's
think
true.
so.
Okay,
So he's dogging me out here.
Right.
And so
Right. And Scott wasn't picking up on it either. So
yeah. It's
I don't know
okay.
how that is. Well, because
I-
what's that book? The Diary of a Wimpy Kid, right? Isn't that a boy?
Yeah, so I guess I don't know. It's a wimpy kid though too. You never
Yeah,
know.
that's true. Just call it a captain's log and just move on.
Yeah. All right. Captain's log. Scott.
All right. Let's see. I'll start at 10 years old, I guess, is when the big first thing happened is my mom and dad got divorced. My dad had been cheating on my mom, I think, for a couple years, and she was finally able to catch him, I think, recording phone calls maybe. So what was crazy is he would talk on the phone to other women when he was, in bed, when my mom was sleeping, which is crazy. But so they split, and we adopted my sister, and the adoption was finalized a month or two, I think, after they were divorced. So my mom stuck, raising another kid as a single mom on top of my two brothers and I. So I have 2 brothers, one older, one younger, and a younger sister. When they adopted my sister, she was 5 months old, so she was a tiny, tiny tot. And then, my mom was raising us. My dad never paid child support. He always bragged about how much he could get away with without paying it. Let's see. Let's move on to high school, I guess. Probably 15, 14 maybe. I think 14. Started smoking pot, smoking weed. Got really bad into it about 16, drinking every weekend, smoking weed every day. Maybe most of the time a half ounce a day. And then probably about 17 is when I was a junior in high school, late junior, early senior year. Started dealing cocaine, ecstasy, acid. We called them rolls because it was like ecstasy, and it was cut with sometimes heroin, sometimes methamphetamine, sometimes whatever you could think of. Hallucinogens, selling mushrooms, taking mushrooms, all that stuff. And I did it every day for probably till a year after high school, but mostly it was selling it and then taking the rolls and acid and stuff on the weekends. And some of the stuff that I had seen on acid was, I wasn't even religious at the time, but you see kind of all kinds of religious things. But I guess, let me move back till I was about 7 or 8. Grew up Catholic, I guess. We went to Catholic church every Sunday. Did my first communion, reconciliation, I guess is what it's called, and all that stuff. But I never really, Catholic church doesn't encourage you to open your Bible, so I didn't know anything about Jesus. I didn't know anything about, I guess, anything other than religion. The priest knows best. Admit your sins to him and he'll forgive you. It's really weird to think about now. You go into the confessional, and I remember my first communion, or my first confession, whatever it's called, just making up a lie because I didn't know any. I hadn't stolen anything. I'd never cussed before, anything like that. So, and then I guess I should have confessed right after that I lied to the priest about sinning. I don't know. I guess I should have, but then we stopped going to church when my mom and dad split. So that was that. So that was when I was 10. We tried another church because, my mom wanted to have us some kind of morals. And the pastor of the church we went to was cheating on his wife. So he got fired. And then they hired a woman pastor, which is unbiblical. That's another rabbit hole we could go down, but not tonight. And she ended up marrying another woman. So they let her go, and then we left the church. That was probably when I was 13 maybe. But let's see. I remember going to counseling for divorced kids, and I used to get so frustrated because it was through the church, and the pastor that was doing the counseling would just say, just go to this book and chapter and verse and read this, and it'll tell you what to do. And I'm thinking, like, I'm an 11-year-old kid, tell me, that everything's going to be all right. Tell me what I need to do to make friends. Tell me what I need to do to, to help my mom, or, whatever, not just tell me what a book says. I don't care about that. I'm 11. I don't know what it means to follow Jesus, what it means to hold Scripture in a, more of importance than any other thing. So I used to get so frustrated at that. And now looking back, if I was a follower or had any kind of respect for religion like I do now, then it'd be a whole different story. But then I just wanted some help.
Do you think it really would? Because I think even as a follower, you need love, attention, and help beyond a script.
Yeah, because
like
I need
scripted.
practical work. Yeah,
right.
Something to put into effect, not just reading a book, but I mean, mentally it would probably help, but to be able to practice it when I'm 11, especially moving and all that stuff, I needed to know how to make friends, and being at a church with divorced parents, and it's just crazy. But there's that. And then I quit doing drugs because I think it's just like the prodigal son, where one day it just clicked, like, what am I doing? I'm making $500 a night selling all this stuff, but then I'm smoking $200 worth of weed, and then I'm drinking the rest in Hennessy, because I would drink Hennessy all the time, and then I would be broke after that, and that'd be the whole weekend gone. It's crazy to think of how much money I would have if I saved that money at $500 a weekend selling drugs rather than smoking it all, going up in smoke. But
Scott, I do have a question on that. So I know you were a lot of weed. Were you into the other stuff or just selling the other stuff?
I was into some of it. I was taking a lot of rolls, ecstasy. Took acid quite a few times. Smoked opium a bunch. I didn't like cocaine. I tried it a couple of times. I didn't like it.
It's so scary. Like, I'm sorry. I don't know. It's just, I know it's, those things are so powerful and can be so life-changing for people. And it's so cool to see that you are here with us, like, unfazed now.
Yeah, I don't know about unfazed. My memory is not what it used to be, that's for sure. And I feel like 5 years of my life, it's not wasted. It's just rearranged, I guess. But it's funny you say it that way, because I remember a couple times taking rolls. I think they were probably cut with heroin, maybe. And skirting the line so close that I thought for sure I was going to overdose, And this was before I knew about, like fentanyl and all that stuff, where, they had the stuff where they can just give it to you and it sobers you back up. But I thought for sure I was overdosing and dead. And how many times, not even being necessarily religious, just, grasping for God and grasping for Jesus, like, God, please just save me. Don't let me die. I'm only 16 years old, 17 years old. If you let me live, then I'll give everything. I'll give all this up, and then I'll follow you. And it was, of course, a lie every time then. But I just figure, his timing. I mean, I guess, inevitably now I follow him, so it was his timing. But it's just, his presence was always there. Because looking back now, I can feel him there, and gets me choked up sometimes thinking about it. But, him letting me live so that I can now, I have a family, and, I study scripture all the time, and I pray to him, and I have a relationship with him, and I love him. But then, for all he cared, I could die. He could let me die. I could be in hell right now. I could never known him, but I guess he held me to my promise just 15 years after the fact or whatever. But fast forward after that, just drank a lot. Met my wife. We dated. I first dated at a bar. Now we're coming up on her and I 2 years sober, no drink, so no anything. We have a daughter. I found Jesus and got saved December 20th of 2020, so coming up here on 2 years. Right? 2020? December, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
No, that can't be right.
It
would be.
years.
Yeah, because I quit drinking a month after I got saved, so it would be, yeah. And then I just remember leading up to that, I think I mentioned it after a podcast last week, but just having one dream of my grandma. She had died 6 weeks after my wife and I got married. She was not healthy, and she couldn't walk probably the last 2.5, 3 years of her life, and she was in a little cart driving around, and she'd passed away. I never got to say goodbye to her, and I had a dream where it felt like we were in a big, huge, I don't know, it was looked like a wealthy retirement home, and it looked super nice, and everything was clean and spotless, and I saw her maybe 50 yards, 60 yards away, and she was wearing all white, almost like white robes, like you would think an angel would wear, but that's not what they look like. But and she saw me, and of course I saw her, and she just started sprinting full speed toward me, and not seeing even her walk for 3 years, and then seeing her run toward me is, I don't know, I think it's more of a God thing than I could even comprehend. But and then her embracing me and telling her, telling me that she loves me and that I'll see her again someday it's closure, because I never got to say goodbye to her. And that I had another dream about her a couple months later, and her and I used to play war all the time. And I remember I had a dream where her and I were playing war and just having a conversation. I don't remember anything other than her telling me that she's proud of me, proud of me and my brother, which is always, great to hear. But let's see. Something else spiritual I've done is, one day I was listening to music in my car, and I just had my hand out, listening to music, and this was after I was saved, and I felt like almost pressure or like weight in my hand, like somebody was holding my hand. That's what it felt like. And I could feel, when I closed my hand, I could feel the like scars on the back of the hand, and it made me, I just broke down crying in the car when I was driving to work. It was a wild sensation, of course, but I just couldn't believe it. But I mean, that brings us to today, I guess. I read my Bible every day. I trust in Him. I deal with anxiety from time to time, but be 2 years sober in January, like I was saying, and that's about it. Any questions? I don't know if I want to.
I love how he said any question. No, I think it's cool. All three stories are going to be so different. But I think God gives us everything we need, from, like you was talking about, being able to feel the scars, and I've never experienced a thing like that. Mm-hmm. But there's been other things, right? Maybe through a song or a situation or another person, but that's just cool. I've never heard anything like that, so that was neat.
I don't know what to say. I think it's really cool. I think that it's amazing how God moves, and it just, like you earlier had said, and I don't know if it was on the podcast or not, but you had said that you just don't think your story's that good, or your testimony's not great, but your story is good, or whatever. But it's sweet. It's awesome.
I say, like, my testimony, nobody invited me to church, like my wife and I would just walk our dog past what at one point was, a vacant building. It was the vacant school, and then we watched it get built and stuff, and then we tried another church, and it was just old people, so we didn't really care for it. And so we're like, well, let's try the one that we lived by, that we saw more or less come to life. So we went there, and we stayed there, and we loved it, and didn't look back, and that's how we got there.
I'm assuming main campus is what we're talking about?
Yes. Yeah, just to think back, it's crazy to think that my mom was able to raise us 4 more or less hooligans, and then she ended up having to adopt 2 more, because, her husband that she remarried to, his daughter was really hard up with drugs too, and they had 6 kids, I think, or 5 kids, and they didn't have any custody of any of them because they were hard up on drugs. So my mom and him had to adopt 2. One was 4 months old, and the other one was, the older one before that. So maybe a year and a half old, whatever the time frame is. But so my mom is my personal hero, my humanly hero, I guess. I don't understand how, her sacrificing working 2 jobs, and that, I guess that's how we got into trouble probably most of the time, because she worked all the time, but there was no other way. She's just a wonderful woman. I don't know what else to say about it. It's crazy to think that she could afford food and a home and everything for 4 kids at one time, and now we're all the house, and then she's got to do 2 more, almost in her 60s, and has a 5 or 11-year-old and a 9-year-old or whatever it would be. It's crazy.
What we talked about, I think, week 1, why moms, there's something, they are superheroes. They are, I don't know how they do it. I mean, I look back, you'll hear stuff about mom, and you'll hear, Tyler, I'm sure you have stuff about mom, what I mean? Just moms are something. They're special. Yeah. They do more than we ever can imagine they can do. Even just the fact that God gave them the ability to bear child, right? To have, we couldn't do it.
Yeah, I don't think men could bear children, let alone deal with them.
So I think just it starts from that point on. There's just that illustration.
I think that's it for me, unless I come up with something or got questions or anything else later. But so we can do best looking to
least.
Looking. So Tyler, you're up next, and then stop with one with Joey.
Scott won that battle.
All right, I don't care to go next. We could rock paper scissors for it, but it would be
Tyler's up. Do you want an introduction? I will give it to you. I'll sing. I'll dance. So Tyler, I know this is your story, but I also know you well enough to know that you do really good when we ask you questions, because your story is so compelling. There's so much to your story, and over the last 2 weeks, you've shared your story. You've shared huge parts of your story, and I'm going to say circa the last 5 years. Right, so challenges. I'm going to call you Dale Earnhardt. I'm going to call you a Marine, and this is kind of cryptic, right? But it's intentional, because your story, the mental health side of your story, which is what we've talked about historically, it's not defined you; it's what you've overcome. So my question to you is, we know you had this chapter in your life, and it was probably a few chapters, right, where you struggled with mental health, and you've overcome that. And I think that's a huge, compelling part of your story that you need to get to. But what about before that? Were you raised in the church?
Yes. So that's a good question. I was raised in church, basically since I was born. I mean, I've been raised in church, and that led to me getting saved early in life. I was 5 years old.
And you were born again?
Yeah, I was born again at 5, so born and then born again real quick.
His poor mom. I mean, talk about parent a child. So as a child, saved at 5, active in church, families in church.
Yes.
Okay.
And my family was very what I'd consider him devout, and in how my dad's faith and my mom's faith was, alcohol was not in the house. It wasn't, my mom's dad was an alcoholic, and so it wasn't around the home. It wouldn't surprise me if my dad did have a drink or two throughout, but like for the most part, like we didn't grow up with beers in the fridge or anything like that. And
It wasn't made a big fuss, a big
Yes.
to do. There wasn't a big exhibit, right?
right. And so the reason I feel like that's important is as I got older, that was not part of my life. And that was a testament to my dad and mom, really, but I never had the desire, and I always had I never had a moment where sober living was not a part of me, which kind of cracks me up now. If we go hindsight looking back, I've had some not so sober moments in my life, but yeah. So getting saved at 5, and then I was baptized when I was 7.
So your profession of faith, 7 years old.
Yes,
That's awesome. What? Let me ask this. So, what were you into as a kiddo? Like, what were your things? Were you was it sports? Was it art? Was it erector sets?
Action
So action figures, Lego,
Awesome.
and
Lego. We
Yeah.
talked about that too.
30
Yeah.
years late.
Yes.
Yeah.
Who, favorite superhero?
Ooh, it would definitely be Spider-Man.
Do you like my shirt tonight?
Yes, I see the Avengers.
Yeah.
So when did you know that you were going to start dealing with mental health?
So that is a great question. Around 16 is when my mom took me to Children's to have some tests done, because my grades were slipping, and it was more than just like typical teenage stuff. And so I'm pretty sure it was like 16 years old. I went for ADHD testing and depression testing, and the doctor did say I was a little bit ADHD back then, but I chose not to take medicine back then.
Interesting.
So and we're probably fast forwarding for you a little bit here. When was your first manic kind of episode? Because
So
I know that the reason I asked that question, Tyler, and I think the three of us know this. Those are big staples. Those have been big things. So when was that first one?
So for me, I was 22, but I realized, like looking back, that I'd been dealing with stuff since I was like 21, possibly even 20, of like you just watch a plane fly by and you're like, well, that could be the CIA, and
Kind of lofty thoughts. And,
yes,
yeah,
and
maybe even some delusions.
right.
I mean, and just face value. And I think it's weird because I think we always associate those things with mental health, but we always associate mental health as a bad thing because I think we all have, and this is totally off topic, and I don't know why, but I just think we all have these lofty ideas and thoughts sometimes and delusions, but I think probably that's where your mental, the illness side of it came in. You could not control the thought and the next thought and the next thought, so it kind of
It's a big snowball.
Okay.
And that's where, for me, my big snowball was I thought my college was like what started out as I was going to school became like my college is watching me, became my college is possibly a trafficking site or something like that. And so like my mind just ramped and ramped and ramped, and I never had, and my college was not any of those things, by the way. So it was like my mind was left to, but I was taking medicine at the time, taking antidepressants, taking not, I guess it's not anti-ADHD meds or whatever, but I was taking meds for ADHD. So that played into it, as well as like, I went into a certain center, when I was, it was after my first manic episode, and they said it's no wonder your mind's tripped up right now based on what you're taking.
Wow.
And
So your meds were off.
Yes.
So Tyler, let me ask you this: how many times have you been hospitalized for?
Oh boy.
So and I say I don't want to say
It's okay.
not an ER visit,
Right.
but how many times have you been hospitalized where you've had to deal with this?
So 5.
Okay.
Maybe 6.
How long? What do you think the time period has been for that? Like,
So the time period has been, some were short, some were just I say short, and people are going to be like, that's not short, and it is for me. And so short was as little as 3 days, but long was 8 months.
so I'm gonna go to the long now. Your last hospitalization. So we're obviously moving forward a little bit here, right? In your
Yeah.
story from what Scott and I know. You had another manic
Yes.
break, right? And some things happened a little bit more severe this time.
Yes.
Right?
I hit rock bottom this time. The basis of the longest one was I hit rock bottom. I got in trouble with the law, and I'm not going to go too much into detail on that, but basically what I can say is that my mental illness caused me to behave differently, react differently to situations that would be otherwise normal to most people. And
So you were irrational in moment, which is expected, right, with what you deal with or we're
yes.
dealing with.
I mean, I didn't plan it.
Right.
Like I didn't.
Right.
It's just like I was taking medicine at the time, and all of a sudden I'm walking down the road again, kind of thing. And so what I can say is I have been cleared by what's called not guilty by reason of insanity. So any law that I did break, I have been cleared of, but it's cleared with a like asterisk. I am on like mental health watch. And so I have people helping me through the state and people helping me through the community, and I'm able to be out in the community and safe and sound and not at rock bottom anymore. I'm actually the best I've ever been.
You're doing awesome. And restrictions, obviously, right, with that plea, I don't know the way to,
Yeah.
right, but those restrictions are getting better too, because
Yes.
you're kind of earning back.
I'm earning back my freedom, and it is a long process. It is not meant to be a short-term fix. It is meant for long-term help, and I just I'm doing good. I had a good report recently, and but I'm actually one of the few that is getting over it. A lot of people are stuck in their mania still, even like maybe it's not mania, but they're schizophrenic and they are lost in their own world. And
So is this a lifetime thing?
yeah, well, no,
Something that you'll have to just...
it's not lifetime, but it it
Well, I
for
mean,
the
not
next
your troubles, but your mental health.
mental
Like, are you
health
just
is
planning on
yes.
you're gonna have to just take medication for the rest of your?
Yes.
Okay.
Like it is like someone having, I think, diabetes. You take insulin.
Yeah, it's an illness. It's a chronic illness. Now, the cool part with I think Tyler's story is, and this is something I know the three of us have talked about is, and maybe last week, he now rationally can look back and see how irrational he was. Most in his shoes do not do that, and that's I think by the grace of God.
Yes.
But I think the other part that stands out about Tyler's story that is incredible is through your mania, through the worst of the worst, when you hit rock bottom and you are making wild decisions, at times with a smile.
Yeah.
But
Well, that's
not-
where our
but-
lives all intersected too. Is
Yeah,
because I was in your dad's rooted class, and then your dad is the one who baptized me.
wow.
And your dad is one of the ones that helped me lead to my salvation, which is the reason that I asked him to baptize me and my wife. And I just remember another thing that intersects is just how much your dad would, like, he wouldn't divulge too much information, but like I knew of you. I'd never met you, but how much your dad would, talk about stuff that was going on, how we'd pray for you every week and stuff. And then now knowing you, it's crazy to think that, I went from hearing about you and praying about you to now sitting here in the room and having a podcast with you. And
Buddies.
Yeah.
I mean, friends.
yeah, we text and talk. We're in the same small group,
Yeah.
everything. It's crazy how God works.
Well,
Yeah.
and all three of us have a connection because of Tyler's story.
Yeah,
I met
that's true.
Tyler in the peak of your, was that your last?
Wasn't my last.
No, it
but
was
it
not.
was
That
the
was the
second
second
to
one.
last.
So I met him in a moment of not in the right mind. He doesn't remember me in the moment. I know him, but I met his mom and dad. Connections were instantly made, and the same thing, right? We're all here together. I think another part of your story, Tyler, that's incredible is we look back at the idea and the fact that God kept you safe. God kept
Yes.
other people safe as well. Like, so
Exactly.
I'm going to share for you that no one was hurt. Truly, like in your episodes, and the things you did, yeah, they were irrational and they didn't make sense, but it could have been so much worse. So God he was there with you, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's bumps and bruises on some people, but their lives could have been changed and they weren't, and that is just such a blessing from God, because I feel like there were moments where I acted in self-defense, and when you're defending yourself, it's for your life.
Yeah, rules
And,
are off the table.
Yeah, and so it is nerve-wracking to think what could have happened, but I just thank God what did happen happened.
Amen.
Like, and
You have a
it-
stronger relationship now than you with
yeah,
God than you did before, right?
It's so my relationship with God is actually I was just thinking about it tonight, like it's very teeter-totter, because I've on one hand I've grown up with what I thought was a strong bond, and then my reality slipped. And when my reality slipped, God was still there, and God was guiding me through this reality, but it wasn't the hand that I initially thought was guiding me, because in the moment I was just like, oh, I thought I was hearing God's voice. Like, I literally was off my rocker. And so when everything was said and done, and it's like, then I see, no, like, yes, God was there protecting me, but he was also protecting other people. He was there giving giving people the right things to say at the right time. And I mean, I was a madman for a while, and I'm thankful in the Bible there's other people that have been crazy, like David, who everybody just reveres, even though he's got some problems. David went insane for a time, and I the pastor of the church that I used to go to, he's the new pastor. When I was meeting with him, and he was like, yeah, even David did this, and I knew it, but I didn't know where it was scripturally. And he like found it. We read it together, and it just, there's been so many highs and lows. Speaking of bipolar, but the I've I've had so many moments, because there's a lot of things about bipolar that I hate, because some things are blacked out, like my brain just does not remember things, and there's other things that it's like I remember them plain as day, and it, or at least I think I do. Like I remember my version of it, and that is where I what's just high stress, your brain. And I'm talking like I know what I'm talking about here, but I just know that the brain's a muscle, and it can get overworked. And my brain was on 2,000% overload for a long time, and it wasn't getting the help it needed until I got into a facility that could take care of me properly.
Well, and over that last facility, right, over 8 months, and you've talked a little bit about it in this before, but that's where the healing really kind of began. And then the growth continued, right? Spiritual growth, and all through that. What do you think when you look at your story, and this as I think is a huge staple? You wanted to do a podcast. The fact that you're doing the podcast and you're doing it well, like, what does that say about your story at this point?
I'm glad that my story can hopefully help others. I definitely am. Someone's got to do it. Someone's got to be the guy that's like, hey, I'll share my story because it needs to be told. I feel like as a Christian, if I like locked up my story and just hid it in a box that and buried it, there's a parable about that where you're just not using your talents. I'm a talker, and so I'm not trying to be the guy that is like, hey, go like breaking laws is a good thing. It's not a good thing at all. And like there's no glory in what I'm trying to
Sure. You're not glorifying
sin,
but
or
your
whatever.
talent
Like,
is your testimony.
yes.
Right? Is that a fair statement?
Yeah.
So I want to ask Scott. Now I'm gonna put you on the spot in a sense, Tyler, but I'm gonna ask Scott, what does it tell you about Tyler, the fact that he's able to sit here and do what he's doing?
Yeah, the fact that you can look back, talk about it, at least not from what I can tell, be embarrassed about it, because you know it's for, not necessarily the better good, but you may be able to in the future help somebody else that's going through it, and not just be like, dang, I messed up, and it's going to be something I'm going to deal with for the next 10 years or whatever, and just mope around downstairs in a basement somewhere. And you have a podcast, you do a B group, whatever, small group, to have no problem talking to anybody now. I mean, you've got all kinds of friends at church and everything, and nobody cares that you were off the rocker at one point, which it's great that, that doesn't necessarily define you. Like, you don't, I don't know, it's just, you're just a normal, everyday dude, to me and to so many other people.
I like, it doesn't define him, but he is defining this whole new thing. Like, his story makes what he is doing so much more remarkable, but if you didn't know, you wouldn't know.
Yeah, if I didn't know if I just had never met you, if I just seen you at church and talked to you a few times and I'd never sat and had a long, conversation with you, I would have never even thought that you had, mania or manic or depressed or anything like that. But
it's, for me, I still struggle with it because it's like there's the issue of just like, man, like, will I ever feel like I got out from what I did because I'm so sorry for the things I did do. I never wanted to be in a situation where I'd be in a courtroom. Like, I never would want that, ever. I don't want that for anybody. I don't care if you get a speeding violation and you think that that's not worth it or something. Like, I'd say don't speed. Like, just take the ticket and go, pay it and just be on your way. But like, court's hard. And for me, I struggle because, I want people to like me. And I feel like my testimony has taken a turn for the worse because of just how things happen. Like, in my mind, I was doing like okay when I really wasn't. I was really falling apart and just had no idea. And so now that I've hit rock bottom, I'm able to bounce back and be better than ever. And so now I'm seeing that, like, hey, now God can use me to make a difference. It's just getting myself to tell, like, even just explaining what I explained tonight was difficult. It's not easy, having a, record, even though it's kind of a record, but it's kind of not. It's the in between, but it's perfect for me. I
think it's great too that, with you having, with us and having other brothers and stuff, that that we can just, you more or less, we can hold you accountable. Like, we can make sure that if we notice anything off, we're like, hey, maybe you need to not necessarily check yourself, because I don't know if people say that anymore, but like
check yourself before you wreck yourself.
But like, hey man, something seems off. Maybe you need to see somebody about it, or if you hit a depressed state and we don't hear from you for whatever, a week or two,
right?
You have someone that can reach out to, either your mom or dad or someone in your family, like, hey, how's Tyler doing? If you don't answer texts, or if we don't see you at church or anything, that you ultimately have people outside of your family that care about you.
Yeah,
absolutely. Another thing I've got to ask is, and tonight I've seen it, I feel like, I'm going to ask you, I'm not going to say what I feel like. Do you carry guilt from this?
Oh, yeah.
So let me ask you this. It's easy to Monday morning quarterback. Easier said than done too. I don't think you need to carry the guilt, and I think that you need to forgive yourself, because you've been forgiven for any wrongdoings, right? Not only by the one that matters most, God, but I think everybody around you, you've had so many fans over the years, so many people rooting for you, praying for you. Your dad, I think, has, every time he's talked about you, it's been that he's proud of you, even though there's been hurt in that, right? There's been hard in that, but you need to forgive yourself. And at the end of the day, I don't even know if forgive is the right word, but because you couldn't even control yourself. And it wasn't that you had done anything to get to that point other than your body had done something to get you to that point.
That's what's hard is it's I understand that the brain, like my brain was literally not working correctly, and it wasn't because I had taken an illegal drug or something, or taken too much of something or anything like that. I was on my antidepressants. I was on the drugs that you call prescribed medication. Drugs sometimes seems too street. I don't know, but I was taking my medicine as prescribed, and it still led to this insane moment. Like literally, I was insane. So insanity, and my problem with forgiveness is that it's like, hey, like I can remember just how I felt at that time or whatever. Like I thought that I was a detective. I thought I was a Marine. I thought everything I was doing was okay. And like speeding down the highway at a high rate of speed was okay for me to do because I had a drone following me, because I had a military buddy, thought I was a Navy SEAL, or thought he was a Navy SEAL kind of thing. And so there's a lot of that I harbor unforgiveness, because it's like, who's going to understand my story? And I mean, I'm relatively safe. But there's people that are out there that are mentally ill, that maybe they commit murder or something.
Sure.
And
or people that they could be homeless and not being able to get.
Yeah.
They can't
They
care
don't have
for
the
themselves.
means.
They
have the means to get medical attention or anything like that.
Tyler, the hardest, we always talk about a big part of living out our faith is forgiveness. And we talk about, right, there's kind of three ways we look at it. Accepting the forgiveness, the big one, forgiving others. The hardest part, and I don't think we talk about it enough, is forgiving ourselves. I think this could be a whole topic on its own, but it is so hard to forgive yourself, because there is the guilt. We carry the guilt of our own burden. We carry the guilt of our own mistakes. And we're humans, and it's hard to sometimes fathom that we've already been forgiven for past, present, and future sins and mistakes and whatever word you want to use. But that is the hardest thing, and I deal with that. We probably all deal with that. But it's a fact of it is what it is. But that's, at the end of the day, that's why we have Christ, too. We know that, hey, He's got us. He forgave us. And that's why I think we have to focus in on that. And the more we focus on that, the more we realize it's okay. It's gone. So we've made it through 2 testimonies tonight. And the title of this podcast is Please Bear With Us. And I think this is one reason we called it that, because we're not going to make it through the third tonight, which is mine. But I'm okay with that, because I think this happened exactly how it was supposed to. Selfishly, I loved hearing from both you guys. And it's not
we'll
about
get into it further. When the time, when themes come up or whatever, and
So I'm gonna say, hey, you guys will hear from me later on. But we all have a story, and I think the big thing we've talked about over and over is we want this podcast to be real. We want it to be transparent. And this was real and transparent tonight. And, there for a minute, Tyler was struggling.
Yeah.
You were like, you kind of looked at us like, can I do this? Well, you did it. You did it, buddy. And Scott, you did it. You've told us things. Heck, you've shared your pink mohawk, which I still want to see a picture.
I can see if I can find one somewhere.
But the fact that you've been able to overcome addiction, most of which people tend to, once they dive into it, it's just like they dove into a pit of quicksand in just a matter of time. And you've come out of that unscathed, essentially. I'm sure scars, right? I'm sure all that stuff, but that's life. We all have scars.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's
people that have died, that I grew up with, that were doing drugs and stuff, that overdosed and died.
Yeah.
So just it's mostly by the grace of God that I'm even still here.
I absolutely. But I think it's awesome. And, the fact of what I see every day are the negative sides of both of your stories. But you guys have the positive side. So what you guys both may not know is it gives me hope. It helps us to keep going in what we're doing in the world of healthcare, and it helps law enforcement. Tyler, I'm sure you've impacted numerous people you've met. Scott, right? You've probably impacted people you've met. It helps everybody keep going when they see that there is an option beyond failure. And it's called redemption, and the key to that redemption is ultimately Christ, which is at the center of who we are. It's the biggest thing we have in common, and it's the greatest thing we have in common. So I know I've kind of taken the end over here, but I'm just going to go ahead and close this out, and I'm going to say, hey, thank you guys. Continue to please bear with us. And until next time, we'll catch you later.